back with another episode of House History. And for this episode, I wanted to talk about the Keller family. They lived in the property that was from where Willow Springs Road turns right by German Church Road, and it went all the way down to just past the 5th Avenue cutoff in that vicinity, I believe. So they had a whole homestead back there, kind of where Fisher Body was, and now it's UPS. So they had their whole homestead back there, and I'm going to go into that, but I just wanted to kind of give a little intro on who I'm talking about. I wanted to thank Robin Godar-Shook and Ginny Keller-Godar for the pictures and the stories and the information. If you remember a couple of episodes ago, I showcased Robin's house, right? So Robin is a Keller, actually, and her grandfather actually originally owned her house. So that was, part of the Kellers too. So I'm kind of just elaborating now on this one. So come along with me and let's learn a little bit about one of our really interesting early families, the Kellers. This is the story of Keller House. It is the last remaining house left standing from the Keller homestead and sits high atop 79th Street to this day. The story is also one of the Keller family in general, who were a significant family in the early days of the Willow Springs and countryside area. Carl Ludwig Keller and his wife Hannah came from Germany with their 6 kids and settled originally in Milwaukee. For whatever reason, that didn't work out, so they packed up their lives in a horse-drawn covered wagon and headed to Illinois, settling at 79th and Willow Springs Road in what was then called Lyonsville. He claimed his 160 acres under the Homestead Act, and soon 3 of his sons did the same, bringing the grand total to 800 acres located between the curve in Willow Springs Road and the 5th Avenue cutoff. Carl farmed, but also started a gravel pit and brickmaking operation, which expanded with his sons, who all eventually each had a home and a gravel pit of their own, and they were all kind of next to each other on this homestead with the gravel pits in the back. So when you're on Willow Springs Road and you look at that area, it's kind of like a big hill, and those pits were kind of behind it, and the house is set up on the hill. So when they had originally come to the area, it was still quite wild and primitive. Potawatomi Indians were still prevalent, but it appears that they were quite friendly, because it seems Hannah used to make up to about 10 loaves of bread at a time in an outdoor oven, and the Indians would smell it baking and would come up and trade fish and rabbit and other game for some of her baked bread. At the time, Willow Springs Road was actually named Keller's Road. Carl and Hannah had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. So Gustav, who was, I think he was the oldest, was married to Sarah Diefenbaugh, and they had 10 kids. Bill married Carrie Clark and had 5 kids, 3 that lived past infancy. Anyway, Fred married Elizabeth Diefenbaugh, who was Sarah's sister, and they had 5 kids. And then Lewis moved to DeKalb to be a farmer and a preacher. The girls, Minnie married Fred Martins, and Hannah married Sam Stark, and they both began families of their own. So Gus had the biggest pit operation, and his and Bill's properties straddled the Santa Fe Railroad, so it was very convenient to easily transport brick and gravel into the city. Fred unfortunately died in a pit collapse at the age of 63, and Gus closed his in 1910, but his sons got it back at least until after the stock market crash of 1930. And after that, Gus took some time off and went out to be a mountaineer, apparently, and it was rumored he was acquaintances with Buffalo Bill Cody. Gus's eldest son, Irv, married a girl by the name of Emma Wolfe, and they had a son who died in infancy, but then they had 2 daughters. Unfortunately, Emma died 2 months after the birth of the last girl. Their 2 daughters were Mildred and Jeanette. Irv and Emma had been living in their own home in Willow Springs, which to this day is still occupied by their granddaughter, Robin Keller Shook, and her husband, John. And if you'll remember a few episodes back, I featured their home on Oakwood. So after Emma had died, Irv returned back to the Keller homestead so that his mom, Sarah, could raise the girls, and his brother, Wally, was also living there. Bill built the house that is still standing on 79th Street. So he had the last house standing of all of them. That was built in 1883 for $100 and took about a year. He and his wife, Carrie Ruth Clark, had 5 kids, but 2 of the daughters had died, like I said, leaving John, Hope, and Emmett. All the kids in the Keller families attended a small schoolhouse called Pleasantdale, and then on to Lyons Township High School, and they also attended Lyonsville Congregational Church. And as you'll see in some of these pictures, a lot of those structures are still pretty recognizable to this day. When Bill's kids had grown, Emmett married a girl by the name of Adrienne DeHoe, and Hope also married, becoming a James. John married Florence Brown, whose parents were May Olivia Potter and E.W. Brown, some of whose E.W. Brown was kind of an eccentric, an interesting guy, and he kept bees. They had a big apiary in Willow Springs. And I included a few of his cartoon sketches in here because he did those a lot. There's a lot of, I found a lot of those, and so I thought I would share those. They resided in the house with Carrie because by this time Bill had passed, and sadly there was a bunch of legal messiness around the property and farms attached with the house, but I won't go into all that. Carrie eventually died in 1927, and John and Florence continued to live in the house, and they had a son, Clark. Flo was an established painter, and she specialized in landscapes and wildflowers, but I also found some really nice drawings that she had done of family members too. Clark married Jean Boosted, and they had 4 daughters, Madeline, Kimberly, Jackie, and Virginia, also called Ginny. John eventually passed, and Flo was still in the house when the homestead was sold to Fisher Body and what is now UPS. They did give her the option to keep the property for $1 if she would have it moved off the property, and so that's what she did. They moved it up the hill past Wolf Road on 79th Street, where it is still standing today. Not in the family anymore, but the subsequent owners have lovingly restored it, and it's a beautiful home. If you are ever driving down 79th Street, take a look. It's on the south side of the street. It's a big yellow, beautiful home with one of those like kind of captain's, I forget what those are called. Those it's like an area on the very top of the house that somebody added, and it kind of makes it stand out. So and I put some pictures in here of what it looks like now, so you can see the how it looked in the day and how it looks now. I really wish that I could delve more deeply into each family, but this is just a snapshot of a fascinating early family of our area. If you are a Keller descendant, want to know more about the family, we have archives at the museum. And if you are someone that just wants to learn more about any of our early families, we have files on all of them. Sandy Balthus in particular is our genealogy expert. She's always happy to help people researching families. So you can contact me if you would like more information on museum hours. And I will see all of you on my next episode of House History.